Woman, are you okay? A middle-aged woman addressed Leslie. Should I call a doctor? Oh, you're right. What am I doing? Leslie replied, slowly emerging from her gloomy thoughts. Leslie paused, looked around, and, to her surprise, realized that she was already sitting on a bench in the foyer of the gynecology department at the local clinic. Wow, I must have gotten lost in my thoughts and came here on autopilot, the woman thought, then looked at the ticket, the queue number slip, and smiled wryly. Well done, I did it, I managed everything. Then she glanced at her concerned neighbor in the waiting room and gave a strained smile, as if thanking her for the sympathy and concern. Her husband had shocked her first thing in the morning. He came back from his business trip and, as soon as he stepped through the door, told her he wanted a divorce. I'm a young man, and I want to live well. With a beautiful, young woman who will give me an heir. But you, Leslie, can't give me that, he said coldly. After 10 years of marriage, she hadn't even had a single delay. Leslie couldn't understand why Roger was being so cruel and unfair. After all, 5 years ago she had undergone a complete examination, and the doctors had said everything was fine with her reproductive function. But her husband refused to get examined. But now he had shifted all the blame onto her. Leslie tried to say something, to make him understand, but it was all in vain. Roger didn't want to listen. It was clear that he had already made up his mind and had no intention of engaging in a dialogue. Silently packing her bag with the essentials, he said, "I've found myself a place to stay. Yesterday, I filed for divorce and property division. I'm keeping the apartment. Start packing your things and get out of my life. I'll stay with a friend for now, but that's only for a month, until the divorce. And after that, goodbye. Live where you want, how you want, but without me and my family's support. And, by the way, don't call me. I've made my decision, and I don't intend to talk to you anymore." Roger left their shared apartment and slammed the door behind him. Leslie sat there for about 15 minutes, staring at one spot. She only snapped out of it when her phone reminded her, in an hour, she had an appointment with the doctor. I need to get ready and leave, she thought automatically. Still unable to believe that the man she loved had so easily destroyed their family life, she got ready, called a taxi, and went to the clinic. There were many people today. The doctor was seeing patients alternately, one by appointment, the other by walk-in. Leslie glanced at the crowd with a sad expression. Don't worry, the line will thin out quickly. The doctor is really good today, and the nurse is super fast. Don't stress, in about 40 minutes, you'll be in the office. The same woman who had offered help earlier spoke to her again. Oh God, the line is the least of my worries right now. If only all of life's problems were like this, Leslie replied bitterly. What do you mean? The woman seemed to have tuned in for a conversation. Or maybe she just felt that the stranger needed to talk. I never thought I'd face a situation where nothing can be fixed. Everything has already been decided for me, and I can't influence anything, Leslie said sadly. Hey! What's with the defeatist attitude? The only thing you can't change is death. Everything else can be solved one way or another. Tell me, are you seriously and incurably ill? The woman asked firmly. No. I'm not ill. And all my loved ones are alive and healthy. I came here because I feel like something's not right with my health, especially with my female health. And the delay. Maybe you're pregnant? Her companion smiled kindly. That's unlikely. We've been trying for 10 years, and nothing ever worked. I can't be pregnant and find out about it an hour after my husband filed for divorce and left. Anything can happen in life, believe me. Anything's possible. She paused briefly, then added, "You know, I want to tell you something. I was in a similar situation, and I survived. Now I have many loved ones around me, and I can honestly say that I'm happy." The woman smiled warmly. "By the way, my name is Stella." "I'm Leslie." "Nice to meet you," Leslie smiled sincerely. It was her first smile of the day. "But you don't seem like the kind of person who could ever be left. You're so beautiful, so confident. Looks like you really need a friend." Stella said cheerfully, "There's a cafe not far from here. It's very cozy, and they make an amazing cheesecake. What do you say?" "I agree." Leslie nodded. "Then let's exchange numbers. In case the doctor calls us to different rooms, we might miss each other." "Sure. Let's meet in the hospital foyer." "Is that convenient?" "Perfect. Whoever finishes first waits." "What if I end up here for a long time?" Leslie said with doubt. Stella smiled. "It's okay, I'll wait for you. I don't have anywhere to rush today." She looked at Leslie more closely and added, "You know, you remind me a lot of myself. I had a 10-year-old child, and I had nothing, no home, no money, no relatives, no friends. I didn't even know how to move forward." "And how did you manage?" Leslie couldn't help but ask. "I'll tell you at the cafe. But I want to say that 2 things helped me survive." "What were they?" Leslie asked eagerly. "The first was my child. He had no one but me. He was completely dependent on his mom and her decisions. And the second? A random acquaintance. She didn't walk past me, she came up, listened to me, and offered help and support." Wow. That sounds like the plot of a movie. It really does. I'll tell you more, we're still good friends to this day. And you know what's interesting? At one point, an unknown person helped her too. She said that by helping me, she was returning the kindness she had once received. It's like a circle of kindness. Leslie laughed. At that moment, her number lit up on the display. "Oh, that's me. I'm running. Stella, please wait for me. I really don't want to lose touch with you. And I really want to hear your story." "Go ahead, don't worry. I'll definitely wait for you." Leslie was the first to finish. She sat in the foyer, waiting for her new friend and at the same time trying to process the new information. 10 weeks pregnant. Stella approached. "Leslie, I hope I didn't keep you waiting too long?" "No, just about 15 minutes. Is everything okay with you? I mean, with the results of the examination?" "With me? Yes, everything's fine for my age. Everything is as it should be," Stella laughed. "And how about you? Did they find the cause of your discomfort?" Leslie took a deep breath and exhaled. "Yes. I'm going to have a baby. In about 6.5 months. Are you happy?" Stella asked cautiously. "Of course. I've been waiting for this for so long." "Well, then congratulations, dear. Let's go to the cafe and celebrate this wonderful event with some delicious tea and amazing pastries. By the way," Stella paused. "Have you told your husband yet?" Leslie smiled sadly. "I tried. But unsuccessfully. She had honestly tried calling Roger, but he wouldn't pick up." Stella hugged her, as if passing on her inner strength. "Let's go, dear. You'll think about the sad stuff later. Right now, the best desserts in the city are waiting for us." The cafe by the river greeted them with soft spring warmth, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and cinnamon rolls. The women settled on the cozy veranda, enjoying the view of the wide and powerful river carrying its waters. The sight was mesmerizing. The waitress quickly brought their order, smiled at the guests, and left. Leslie cautiously stirred the mousse in her cappuccino with a spoon and almost whispered, "You went through this too, didn't you?" Stella smiled knowingly. "Yes. If you want, I'll tell you." "I really want to." Leslie nodded. It was as if she feared that if she didn't hear the story now, she would lose her last bit of hope. Deep inside, she still held on to a faint belief. What if he comes to his senses? What if he returns? Stella took a small sip of coffee, thought for a moment, and began. "All right. Listen." She leaned in closer and, as if conspiring, whispered, "Now I'll tell you my terrible, terrible secret." Then she winked at Leslie and, taking another sip of coffee, began to recall the events. It was clear that the hurt and fear she once felt, Stella hadn't forgotten. "I was only 17 when I got married," she began. "A silly, naive girl from a small provincial town with 30,000 people. I was sure that this was true love. I thought that with my sweetheart, I would have paradise in a hut, that he would protect me from everything in the world. After all, he was so big and smart, 10 years older than me, with a good job and a great salary. He radiated strength and confidence. Back then, I thought I was completely safe with him." Leslie listened carefully, taking a tiny bite of mousse. "Almost immediately, I got pregnant," Stella continued. "My husband seemed to like it, but gradually, he began to change. Unfortunately, not for the better." She took a sip of coffee, looked thoughtfully at the river, and continued. "At first, he started making remarks about little things. Don't wear that outfit, don't talk to that friend, don't come back after 6, always call me and report your purchases, don't buy anything we haven't discussed." I obeyed. What could a silly girl do? I thought he knew better. After all, he was older and more experienced. She shook her head, as if surprised at how she could have believed all that nonsense back then. Then the criticisms became more serious. He took my phone away, forbade me from meeting with my parents. Eventually, I even started to believe that they hated my husband and wanted us to divorce. Although, yes, at first, I resisted, but he always assured me that I was wrong. "You don't understand, I'm taking care of you." Stella smirked, but there was sadness in her eyes. When Dave turned 3, we moved to the capital. I cut off all contact with my relatives. At some point, I realized I was living in isolation, no friends, no family, no chance to change anything. He controlled every step I took. And then, he simply threw us out the door. Leslie froze, holding the spoon in her hands. "How, he just threw you out?" "Yes," Stella nodded. "One evening, he told me to dress warmly, to dress the kid warmly, and to take everything we would need for a few days. I thought he was preparing a surprise for us. And indeed, he took us to the suburbs, handed me an envelope with money, and said, 'Leave. I'm tired of your constantly dissatisfied face and this whiny son.' And then he turned around and left." Leslie felt a chill run down her spine. In that fear, she recognized her own. Loneliness, helplessness, the pain of betrayal from the person she had spent 12 years of her life with. "And then what happened?" she asked, afraid of the heavy answer. Stella unexpectedly smiled. "And then a miracle happened." She took another sip of coffee. A woman, about 40 years old, was walking by. Well-dressed, confident. She stopped, looked at me, and asked, "What are you doing here with a child?" I told her everything, just as it was. She didn't say anything, just took my hand and said, "Let's go." Leslie pressed her fingers to her lips, astonished. And you went with her? With a stranger? In the evening? Into the unknown? I went, Stella nodded. Now I understand that I was taking a risk. Both for myself and for my son. But back then, for some reason, I didn't even think about the bad. And where did she take you? To her house. To a cottage village on the outskirts. We lived there for several years. Dave went to the local school with her son. I got a job, enrolled in university. After 5 years, I graduated, found a well-paid job, and bought an apartment on a mortgage. 2 years later, I met a wonderful man who loves and appreciates me and accepted my son as his own. We got married, and we're still living soul to soul. Leslie wiped her tears away. And your son? My son grew up, graduated from university, and works as a lawyer in a bank in the capital. I'm incredibly proud of him. He recently married a very nice girl. Soon, we're going to have a grandson. Leslie looked at her, tears running down her cheeks. So, it's possible? Of course, it's possible, Stella said warmly. The main thing is to believe and act, and not be fooled by those who are not worth it. Now, let's go step by step. Stella carefully moved her coffee cup aside. We need to figure out what you have and how to use it. Leslie sighed, shrugged her shoulders a little, and settled in more comfortably. I have a job. I'm a kindergarten teacher. The salary is small, but I enjoy working with children, and they pay me back with their affection. Was your husband happy with the fact that you earned little? Yes. When I was offered a promotion or a higher-paying job, he was totally against it. We even fought about it, but he always said that a woman should stay at home, and he would support the family. But in the end, he constantly reproached me for not bringing enough money into the house. Stella shook her head. Classic. Men with that mindset prefer when a woman depends on them both psychologically and financially. Now I understand that. What should I do? I don't have any savings, no safety net. I'll get my salary and vacation pay, that'll last a month or two. But a child, that's really expensive. Let's see what you have besides your job, and then we'll panic if there's reason to, Stella said gently. The apartment. We bought it together while we were married. Half the money was mine, and the other half was financed with a mortgage in his name. My parents helped us. So, he can't just take the apartment for himself. But he acts like he can. He spoke about it so confidently, as if he has no doubt about the outcome. That's because you haven't started fighting yet. What about the dacha? It's my grandmother's. I inherited it. And also my father's car. And some other small things. Good. That's yours without question. He has no rights to it. And most importantly, that's a place you can go to if needed. You can stay there while you sort out housing issues and the court case. Leslie nodded slowly. She had never thought of the dacha as her support. For her, it was just a place where she spent the summer, planted vegetables, made preserves, and rested her soul. Now, let's talk about what you can do besides work. Leslie thought for a moment. Well, I make volet de lace. But it's more of a hobby. Mostly, I made it for my mother-in-law. She loved dressing up, asking for accessories, or a blouse, or a shawl, or a dress. Stella raised her eyebrows. Volet de lace is an art form. Do you realize you can make money from that? Really? Leslie looked up in surprise. I never considered it as a way to earn money. And honestly, I don't think anyone needs it. I just make it for myself. My grandmother taught me when I was little, and it really calms me, slowly creating beauty. For the first time in a long while, Leslie felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. And what about people who could support you? I mean your parents, other relatives, friends. My parents passed away recently. Both of them in the past couple of years. Friends. Roger somehow gradually pushed them away. As soon as I'd meet someone outside the house, he'd get angry. And if anyone came over, he was always rude to them. In the end, there's no one left. I have one new acquaintance. We met by chance. She's a colleague of Roger's, but he doesn't know about her. Excellent. That means you still have a connection with his circle. If that becomes necessary. Leslie thought for a moment. So, you think my situation isn't as bad as I thought? Of course not, Stella smiled. You have a roof over your head, skills you can monetize, education, experience, and a job. And most importantly, you have the ability to leave him without walking away empty-handed. Now the key is to play everything correctly. What do you mean? Let's start by looking for another job for you, ways to earn money through your lace work, and legal support. I'll help. I have the right contacts, and my husband will represent you in court. I don't think he'll refuse me. But that's incredibly expensive, Leslie said nervously. Don't worry about that. I'll take care of the legal matters. I don't think he'll refuse me in that regard either. Thank you, Leslie smiled for the first time that evening. Now, the plan. How do you feel about coming out of this situation as a winner? Nancy asked with a conspiratorial look. Leslie sat there, realizing that for the first time in a long while, a plan had appeared in her life. In the dark room, holding the phone in her hands, she hesitated for a long time before dialing the number. But she understood that postponing the conversation was pointless. Inhale, exhale. She pressed the call button. Roger finally answered. What do you need? What was unclear about what I said yesterday morning? Should I block you? His voice was sharp, irritated, and cold. We need to talk, she said calmly, trying not to let her voice reveal how nervous she was. About the child. What child are you talking about? I was at the hospital yesterday. They told me about the pregnancy. Already 12 weeks. You must have gotten pregnant somewhere on the side, and now you want to pin it on me? No way. Roger snapped sharply. All right. It's clear what your position on this issue is. Then let's talk about the division of property. We can, in principle, part ways civilly and fairly divide everything between you and me. With the baby? This is impossible. What, do you think I'm a fool? Or do you really believe you're going to get anything? Leslie, stop making me laugh. Everything will stay with me. You didn't earn a dime, you just sat on my neck. Leslie felt something twist inside her. At the very least, half of the apartment is mine. I invested money into it. Go ahead and sue, he tossed out gruffly. I have good lawyers. The most you can take are your clothes and move out to your beloved dacha. To the cucumbers and tomatoes. Do you seriously think you can just take everything from me? And do you seriously think you have a chance to win this? That things will turn out differently? His voice became threatening. Court, lawyers, nerves. You want to fight with me? Then try. I'll destroy you, you bitch. All you can do is mess with my nerves. No dignity, no brains. How did I even live with you all this time? Leslie clenched her fingers on the phone. Thank you for finally showing your true face, she said quietly. Go to hell. He snapped and ended the call. There was no pain, no tears. Just emptiness. Emptiness and the clear realization that there had never been love in their family. At least not from Roger's side. Leslie stood up from the couch and went to the bedroom. Tomorrow would be a new day. And she wouldn't let this monster hurt her or her child. She quickly packed her things, documents, clothes, a few boxes of lace, her laptop. She wasn't going to leave him anything important. She called a taxi, loaded the suitcases into the car, and took one last look at the apartment. Not long ago, this had been her home. Now it was just a place she needed to leave to start over. Although she had every chance of standing her ground for her right to these square meters, so she could sell them and provide her small family with a new home. "Where are we going?" the driver asked. "To the suburbs, to the dacha," Leslie replied, giving him the exact address. The car drove off. Leslie looked out the window as the lights of the big city slowly disappeared, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was becoming the master of her life again. Leslie sat on the porch of the dacha, wrapped in a warm blanket. Even though summer was slowly taking over, the evenings were still a little chilly. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was her mother-in-law. "Leslie, dear. I'm so sorry about what happened with Roger," she started right away. "Yes, Mom, I'm sorry too. Leslie, but I hope you won't abandon me just because you're separating. You're like a daughter to me. I won't survive this." The woman rushed out in a rapid-fire tone. "Mom, of course, I won't abandon you. And have you finished those shawls I asked for?" her mother-in-law asked with concern. Leslie genuinely didn't understand how her shawls were connected to the divorce. But she decided not to make a fuss, so she replied, "Just a little left." The woman begged her not to let her down, as it was very important to her, and then she said goodbye and hung up. Leslie was somewhat put off by this attitude. Although, at this point, there was really nothing good to expect from this family. About 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. The screen displayed the name, Tiffany. Her new acquaintance, the one who worked with her husband, Tiffany. "Hi, Leslie. How are you? Is everything okay?" The voice of her friend came through the phone. "I heard you and Roger are getting a divorce." "Yesterday, but it will be worse tomorrow," Leslie sighed. "Listen, I couldn't not call. I know this is a tough time for you, but I need to tell you something." "Is it urgent?" "I think so. At least, it would be really interesting to me. And knowing Roger, you'll need an ace up your sleeve before the court," Tiffany chuckled. "Remember you told me you were making volant de lace?" "Of course. Do you know they sell for a lot of money?" "What?" Leslie furrowed her brow. "Wait, what do you mean?" "I don't sell them." "You don't. But your husband and mother-in-law do. Would you be interested to know where they get them from?" "What a scoundrel!" Leslie exclaimed, realizing that her husband and his mother had been deceiving her here too. Tiffany completely agreed with her friend and continued to share the details. "Roger has been selling your lace to our company for several years. Our boss gives them as souvenirs to foreign partners." Leslie froze. "What?" "And he doesn't sell them just like that, he sells them for a very high price. So high that the last time, the earnings from your lace in 1 month were almost 3 times more than his salary. And this isn't an isolated case." Leslie felt everything inside her boil with anger. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Tiffany said seriously. "And that's not all. He signed a contract for a new batch of lace, and he already received an advance." By the end of the month, he has to deliver several pieces. Leslie squeezed the phone in her hand. This is exactly what my mother-in-law asked for, she said slowly. Well, she won't be getting them now. Her mother-in-law was always ordering new pieces from her, picking patterns from magazines, and hurrying her to finish. But it turns out, all this time, she had been the one providing for them. So that's where Roger got the money to pay off the mortgage early, where he always had money for expensive restaurants, trips, and things for his mother. Tiffany seemed to hear her thoughts. Leslie, you weren't just supporting Roger. You were supporting his mother, his family. And he was shamelessly lying to you all these years. Yes, it's an unpleasant revelation, but as a friend, I had to tell you. I support you 100%. And you know what? We'll sell this lace to our company. To you. And he gets nothing. Leslie took a deep breath. Honestly, the idea wasn't bad at all. Tiffany, thank you. Forget it. We're with you. And that guy won't be making money off you anymore. Leslie looked at the old wooden table where her latest works lay. Just a little more, just a tiny bit more, and she'd finish this order. But now, it wouldn't be for her husband. It would be for herself and her child. If her works were truly so in demand and well paid, she could support herself during her pregnancy and maternity leave. Let's do it, she said firmly. The day had come when they agreed to meet, Tiffany, Stella, and the lawyer, John. By the appointed time, the quiet street was filled with the sounds of passing cars. First, Stella's silver sedan appeared, which she had picked Tiffany up on her way, followed by the dark car of her lawyer husband, which drove onto the property. The man was the first to get out of the car. Leslie, he introduced himself, shaking her hand. John. Nancy briefed me on your situation, so let's discuss everything in more detail today. Stella exchanged looks with Tiffany and nodded in agreement with the plan. Come on in. I've prepared all the documents, Leslie replied, inviting them inside. They sat at a large wooden table. Leslie laid out the documents she had gathered over the past week in front of the lawyer. Here's the marriage certificate, the apartment sale agreement, the dacha documents, and my father's car. John flipped through the papers. Half of these are with you? Yes, my parents helped me. Great. That means the apartment is split in half. And the dacha, did it pass to you by inheritance? Yes, it's completely registered in my name. Then he has no rights to it. You can be at ease. Leslie nodded. But there's something else, Tiffany interjected. I found out that Roger has been selling Leslie's lace for several years, passing it off as exclusive gifts for VIP clients for a lot of money. The lawyer raised his head. Interesting. Can you confirm this? Yes, Tiffany answered confidently. I'm ready to testify in court. Also, boss is ready to provide these documents. I can help you write the proper legal request so he can submit them to the court. John nodded approvingly. This could be a great argument in court. If we prove that he was making money off her work without her knowledge, we can demand compensation. Leslie clenched her fists. That's fair. Absolutely, the lawyer agreed. He flipped through the papers one more time, then put them in a folder. Overall, we have very good chances. According to the law, since you're pregnant, the court will likely rule that the majority of the property should remain with you. The apartment will be divided in half, but given your condition, the judge might grant you the right to buy out his share. As for the lace sales, we will try to secure compensation for you. Leslie felt a weight lift off her shoulders a little. Stella, who had been silently listening to the conversation, then looked at Leslie attentively. How are you doing with money? Leslie hesitated. Well, I still have some. I recently got my vacation pay. Leslie, don't be shy. I'll cover all the lawyer's fees. And if you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask. I'll lend you money, Stella said firmly. Leslie smiled. Thanks, but I'm managing on my own for now. As you wish. But if you need anything, just reach out. John left first. He understood that the girls needed to talk some more. I had an ultrasound today, Leslie suddenly said, gazing at the clear blue sky, which was especially bright and beautiful at this time of year. Well, and? Nancy and Tiffany perked up. Everything's fine. The baby is healthy, and so am I. I'm finally starting to slowly prepare for his arrival. Tiffany and Stella exchanged glances, then hugged Leslie tightly. The day of the trial arrived. Leslie sat in the courtroom next to John. She squeezed her fingers tightly together, as she was very nervous. The judge entered the room, and the proceedings began. Since her husband was the plaintiff, the judge first heard his position and arguments. Roger spoke confidently and calmly, as though he had memorized his speech in advance. I completely provided for the family, he declared, crossing his arms over his chest. My wife earned pennies, never thought about the future. I bought the apartment with my money. It was transferred to the seller from my account. She didn't contribute a single cent. And besides, he paused. We didn't have children because she couldn't have any. Leslie clenched her jaw. I demand that the apartment be left to me, as it is my property. Leslie felt her anger bubbling up inside her. He was lying so blatantly, looking the judge in the face, that it was almost laughable. When it was their turn, John calmly stood up and placed a folder of documents in front of the judge. Your Honor, I would like to present an excerpt regarding the pregnancy of my client. The money for the apartment was provided by Leslie's parents. They transferred it to her account, and she, following her husband's instructions, transferred it to his account. Here are all the bank statements. Can the plaintiff, if he claims to have contributed half the amount during the purchase, confirm this? The judge opened the statements. This completely refutes the defendant's statement that the apartment was bought solely with his money. Leslie caught Roger's gaze. A shadow of doubt flickered in it. But that's not all, Your Honor, John continued, laying out new documents. I would like to draw the court's attention to the contracts for the sale of Vola de Lace, made by Leslie. A silence hung in the room. These papers showed that Roger not only knew about his wife's creative activities, but also, without her knowledge, had earned vast sums over the past 3 years, according to official documents, far exceeding his salary. Therefore, we believe that a 50-50 division of the apartment between the plaintiff and the defendant is not possible, as, judging by his official salary, he wouldn't have been able to pay off the mortgage so quickly. He did it with money from the sale of lace. My client, John added. The judge flipped through the documents presented by the lawyer with interest. Leslie noticed that Roger was clenching his fists in rage. He clearly hadn't expected all his deeds to come to light so quickly. Therefore, John concluded, we insist that Leslie was not only not financially dependent on her husband and his salary, but on the contrary, she supported her family and her mother-in-law. Moreover, given her pregnancy, the court should take into account the interests of the unborn child when dividing the property. The judge set aside the documents. I will take these arguments into account. It turned out that Roger wasn't going to give up so easily. I have one more statement, Your Honor, he suddenly said, standing up. The judge raised his gaze to him. I am filing a petition for a DNA test. I doubt that the child is mine and has any rights to the property I have acquired. We lived together for 10 years, had no children, so why now? I demand a paternity test. The judge sighed heavily and looked at Leslie's lawyer. Your opinion? John calmly nodded. We have no objection, it's a standard procedure. All right, said the judge, making a note. I am appointing a DNA test. The next hearing will take place after the results are received. The second hearing went much faster. Leslie had the DNA test, and the result was clear. Roger was the father of her child. The judge flipped through the papers, making his final notes, then looked at those present and began reading the verdict. The court has reviewed the case materials, examined the financial documents, and taken into account the special circumstances, namely the plaintiff's pregnancy. According to the court's decision, 2/3 of the apartment will be transferred to Leslie as the mother of a minor child. The black car, purchased during the marriage with borrowed funds through an auto loan program, will be sold, with the proceeds divided equally between the plaintiff and the defendant. The car remains in the respondent's ownership. The dacha also remains in the respondent's ownership along with all the property inside it. The household appliances and other belongings located in the apartment of the plaintiff and defendant remain with the respondent. Leslie felt John lightly tap his finger on the table as if saying, "We won, everything is under control." But she felt uneasy. She looked at Roger and saw that his eyes were filled with intense hatred. While the judge was reading the verdict, her husband never took his eyes off Leslie. However, by the end, as they were leaving, she noticed that his expression had changed. Instead of anger and hatred, she now saw mockery in his eyes. Leslie felt uneasy, but then Stella and Tiffany were right beside her. Stella took her arm firmly. "Come on, darling, it's all over." Tiffany stood up on the other side, casting a hard, contemptuous look at Roger. She won. They won. It was a complete, unquestionable victory. If Leslie makes a deal with Stephanie's company and sells all her products, this amount will be enough for her to buy out Roger's share of the apartment. Leslie and her wonderful support group went straight to the cafe on the waterfront right after the divorce. At the table, there was a sense of lightness, and everyone was excited about the good outcome of the trial. You should have seen his face when the judge announced the decision, Tiffany laughed. Stirring her tea with a spoon, Leslie snorted. "I actually saw it," she said. "I never thought someone could hate someone else that much." "The important thing is that now he can't do anything to you," John said confidently, lifting his coffee cup. "And now what?" asked Stella, leaning back in her chair. Leslie thought for a moment. "The future no longer scares me. Now I want to live for myself and my child." "That's right," Stella nodded. After the fun gathering with her new friends, Leslie went to the dacha to relax after the trial. Upon arriving at the house, she tiredly stepped out of the taxi and took a deep breath of the fresh evening air. Finally, after all the adventures and troubles of the past few months, she felt peace. She had long dreamed of leaving the city, distancing herself from all that hell, and starting a new life. But as soon as she opened the gate, a chill ran through her. Leslie stopped but didn't scream. She quickly decided she wouldn't cause a scene. She would punish them in a way they'd remember for a long time. Before her former relatives saw her, she slowly took out her phone and dialed the familiar number. "John, they're here, loading the things." "Don't do anything. Call the police. Don't let them see you until we or the police arrive. Roger is in a state where he could harm you or the child, not just the things." "I'm already on my way." "Good, I'll do everything as you say." Leslie calmly dialed the police number. Now let them deal with Roger and his mommy's schemes. 15 minutes later, the area around the dacha was filled with the wail of sirens, and several police cars with flashing lights pulled up to her house. Right behind them, John's Jeep came onto the street. The police quickly got out of their vehicles. Roger froze, holding another box in his hands. His mother flinched by the open trunk of their Renault. "What's this mess on my dacha?" asked the captain, holding the court ruling in his hands. "This is my client, and this is unquestionably her dacha. And these man and woman are shamelessly, in broad daylight, stripping her house. Here's the paperwork. The dacha is her personal property. These citizens are here without invitation." The captain nodded and pulled out handcuffs. "Guys, take care of the paperwork." The woman and her husband were clearly still stunned by what had just happened. Even Leslie's appearance in the yard couldn't shake his state. However, it was the former mother-in-law who reacted immediately. She shot Leslie a look full of hatred. And when she was being put into the police car, she screamed, "I'll curse you and your bastard. He'll rot." Leslie didn't flinch. She simply watched as the car door slammed shut. John was standing next to her. He looked at her and said, "Well, now you can finally live in peace." Leslie nodded. Yes, and for the first time in a long while, she felt that it was true. Leslie sat at her dacha, looking into the fire of the fireplace. She thought about how her life had changed over the past few months. She thought about Roger and his mother. No, not with regret, more with surprise. How could she have not seen who they really were for so many years? They hadn't suddenly become scoundrels, they had always been that way. She just didn't want to notice it. It turned out that in the first weeks after she found out about the divorce, Roger and his mother took everything they could out of the garage. Evidence for the police, the old aide of her father's, the car that Roger sold using the power of attorney he once got to drive it on fishing trips. Later, his mother tried to start a fire at the dacha, hoping that Leslie would be scared and give up. The cameras in the dacha village recorded everything. The vigilant neighbors, who genuinely loved Leslie and couldn't stand her mother-in-law, her husband's ex-wife, didn't let the fire spread and quickly put it out. Roger and his mother were charged with fraud, burglary, and arson. The court gave them no chance and imposed the maximum sentences for each offense. Leslie didn't attend the verdict reading. Instead, John, Stella, and Tiffany were there. They told her everything over the phone after the hearing. "You know what I found out?" Tiffany spoke quickly, her voice clearly filled with malicious glee. "Don't tease me, friend, just tell me already," Leslie asked calmly. "It wasn't just that he had a young mistress. She got pregnant by him, that's why he was kicking you out of the apartment, the jerk, so he could set up a comfortable living space with his new passion. But the funniest part happened in court. She was there too. And what, did he do something about it? He tried to keep her, can you imagine? Reached out to her and said, 'You can't do this to me, we're going to have a child.'" Tiffany laughed and continued. "And she laughed in his face and said, 'You're a cuckold, this child isn't yours.'" And that, perhaps, was the end of Roger's story. Leslie no longer thought about him, all of that was far in the past, in another life, which she no longer had the slightest interest in. She ran her hand over her stomach. "The future, and it will definitely be happy," she said softly.